Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bolt Breakdowns here on the Guilty as Charged podcast YouTube channel. Here to talk about the Chargers 31-17. Frustrating, another road loss to the Chiefs. So we're going to get into everything about that. Two things off the top. I am really sick. So this is sort of my Jordan flu game performance, if you will. I originally considered not recording, but I still did want to talk about everything in this game and give it my best shot. So bear with me if I'm not at my best level today. And then, for those of you who do still stick around and watch the live streams and watch my show, Bolt Breakdowns, watch Analytics with Arjun, and watch Katz's show on the draft, we appreciate you guys sticking around. We know that watching us or, Chargers coverage in general after a loss is not as fun as it is after a win. And, I know that there is some portion of this fan base checking on Twitter and everything else that does feel kind of checked out at this point in the season, which is tough. That is not how any of us, I think, expected the first 6 games to go. So for those of you who do still stick around and watch our videos and engage with me on social media, or just follow the Chargers still in general and watch our content, I appreciate you guys sticking around. As always, getting into the game, first and foremost, I think the game is a lot of what we've seen from the Chargers this season, which is a lack of complementary football, right? We talked about this against Miami, but offense shows up, defense doesn't, Chargers lose. You go to the Tennessee game, offense didn't show up as well, but, it was largely some defensive miscues that gave the Titans some pretty big plays in that one. Against Dallas, it felt like the defense showed up, offense didn't. And, kind of a mixed bag today in terms of this being maybe the most confusing game the Chargers have played, where the defense is getting destroyed in the first half, offense is getting whatever it wants. And then the script flips in the second half, right? Where, again, the defense, kind of balls out, to give some credit to Staley in terms of, the adjustments he made in the second half, and then the offense falters, and suddenly I believe the stat we'll talk about Herbert later, but not completing a high percentage of his passes in the second half, still a lot of pressure in his face, and kind of staring down some targets. So we'll talk about that in a bit when we talk about the offense. Let's talk about the defense first. Weird game, and the thing that gets me about this game is Brandon Staley knows the Chiefs so well. Right. He plays them 2 times a year. This is his 5th game against the Chiefs, essentially, since he's become Chargers head coach. And when you look at what they did in week 3 of 2021, when you look at what they did in week 2 of 2022, when they played the Chiefs both times at Arrowhead, the Staley has known that you have to play man coverage if you just want to keep the game competitive, essentially, against the Chiefs. Right. This is from Daniel Popper's The Athletic article, but they played 67% man coverage against the Chiefs in 2021, week 2, when the Chargers won that game at Arrowhead. Week 3 when they won the game at Arrowhead in 2021. And then in 2022, they played still at 50% man coverage level. Today, I don't know what the exact numbers are according to True Media Sports, but they were playing soft zone the entirety of the first half. There might have been 1 or 2 plays in the first half where they played press man in general, and those are the plays where they actually got the Chiefs to turn the ball over or look a little less efficient early and down. So it was just perplexing to see the Chargers come out and do the soft zone stuff. And Brandon Staley in his press conference after the game said, oh well, the Chiefs just they beat us on some man and zone looks. It didn't matter what we were throwing at them. They just took advantage of that, and that's going to happen because it's Mahomes and Kelce, right? And the machine that they've created over there. But, the Chargers players came out after the game and basically said that was wrong, right? Michael Davis and Derwin James were sitting in their lockers. According to Popper's Athletic article, basically said, yeah, we played zone the entirety of the first half, right? It wasn't, Kelce just, route running and breaking our ankles, right? He's just beating us in coverage again and again and again, which Travis Kelce is capable of doing. It was the fact that he just got to the spot, turned around, and there wasn't a Charger within 5 yards of him. You just can't play a game like that against the Chiefs. And it's so confusing because Brandon Staley knows that, right? So, and for him to then like shift it in the second half to the point where they are playing more press man, double covering Kelce, jamming at the line, all of these things, it's like, where was that in the first half, right? It's just like, why was that the game plan coming into the game? Tony Romo is talking about the defense, on CBS, where you had, I think, a third down play early in that game where Michael Davis is in coverage on Sky Moore, and Sky Moore, essentially just runs basically an out route, and Michael Davis is all the way probably at Kansas City Royal Stadium, 40 yards back from the line of scrimmage, it feels like, and it allows for an easy conversion, right? And even when the Chargers did adjust in the second half, there were so just many weird moments, right? I mean, the moment of the game is maybe that 3rd and 15. The Chargers go into complete prevent defense. And how many times have we seen over the years, we've seen it again and again. Mahomes picks up a third down with his legs. I believe he did it twice in this game, if I'm not mistaken. And they do the whole prevent defense thing. And Mahomes picks up 16 yards on a third down and 15 with his legs. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Brandon. This is the greatest third down defense in the world that I've ever seen. But, it's just so tough to watch that, right? Where it's just like, it felt like just seeing that they were in prevent and everybody is, they have to gain 15 yards and everybody's 13 yards back. I felt like I already knew what was going to happen, right? Either that somebody would miss a tackle in space, and they would get the ball to one of their, quicker receivers, or Mahomes is going to run and pick up the first down because you've given him all of this, open lane. You've given him this entire avenue. He's going to take it. We've seen, I actually want to see what Mahomes's rushing yards were in this game. I think I only remember 2 runs off the top of my head. Let me see. He had 4 rushes for 29 yards, which includes that scramble. I believe that the over-under was 25.5. And I said during the Steven and Tyler's Saturday stream that you should bet the over on that. So I ended up right. Not good. But yeah, it was just so confusing to see that be the game plan. And there are so many other instances in this game of that where the Chiefs have to convert on third down. And the Chargers just play the most weird coverage look they can possibly play. And again, I believe the Chiefs went 6 for 11 on third down in this game. And to me, that's kind of the story. If you're going to give the Chiefs above 50% conversion on third down, they're going to take it, right? They're going to take whatever you give them. And it felt like the Chargers stopped them on third down was just because Mahomes missed a pass, or, you had the play where I think it was third down and the Chargers got the ball back. Kelce tried to catch the ball and Jot Taylor kind of knocked it loose, but really Kelce just kind of dropped it. So that really could have been 8 for 11, 9 for 11, 10 for 11 if the Chiefs took advantage of their opportunities. Credit to the Chargers for defending still. But I thought this could have been a worse game on third down than it actually is on the box score for the Chargers, because they did get the ball back. And we'll talk about the offense and what they did when they got the ball back later. But it's a confusing game because you see the offense come out with that series of scripted plays that actually worked out really well for Kellen Moore. We'll talk about the rest of it later. But Brandon Staley's defenses have just opened games really poorly for the most part. We saw it against Miami. I would say we saw it to some extent against Tennessee. And really the only game that I felt like they had, the script from the opening jump for was the Raiders. And no offense to the Raiders game plan, but they were playing Aiden O'Connell in his first NFL game, who the Josh McDaniels decided not to start yesterday entirely. So take that for what it's worth. But it feels like from a defensive standpoint, they, always have to adjust at halftime because they're doing the wrong thing. And this is such an unusual thing, I guess, under Staley, because in previous years, he has cooked up game plans that we've seen, or, even if it's they're getting torched on defense in the first half, it's because of some miscommunication or something. But there was no miscommunication today, Like, this was the defense that was supposed to be ran in the first half. And for it to go as poorly as it did, it was just unacceptable in the first half. Credit to adjusting in the second half, but as Brandon Staley said in his press conference, the damage was done in the first. And then essentially, because the Chargers offense was struggling, their margin for error in the second half was just like, hey, you give up a touchdown, you're done, right? And again, we'll talk about the offense when we get there. But the Chargers, Brandon Staley's sales pitch for this team was, I'm going to fix the defense. And again, the defense isn't fixed, right? Like, this is just what we've seen 3 years in. And Brandon Staley largely has the personnel he wants. I understand the JC Jackson thing, didn't play out how anybody wanted, and that's no one's fault specifically. I think that's a whole combined team effort on that one. In terms of what went wrong in that scenario. But everyone was largely healthy for this game. I know Derwin's dealing with the ankle thing. Joey obviously has his situation, but like, you kind of had all your defensive starters in this game for the most part, really outside of Alohi Gilman. And for the Chargers to play as bad as they did, it's just like, what am I supposed to talk about, right? In terms of, someone asked me on Twitter, what did you think of Derwin's performance, right? What did you think of Dean Marlowe's performance? What did you think of John Taylor, right? How am I supposed to give you honest reviews on these players when they were just executing the scheme they were asked to in the first half, right? Like, they were just basically asked to play soft zone and like play off. So it's like, am I supposed to skewer Derwin because the game plan was to give Travis Kelce all that free space? I don't know. I mean, Derwin had his losses against Travis Kelce, but he also had his wins. Like, I can't even say I thought like the safeties or corners like played terribly, rather than just saying they executed the scheme they were supposed to, which is a scheme that Brandon Staley shockingly didn't know was a losing scheme. And I say that because, and I know people will get on Staley obviously and just be like, oh, well, you should have expected that. It's like, Staley knows what to expect with the Chiefs, as I said earlier. And the fact that you beat them by playing a bunch of efficient man coverage and press them at the line and get pressure, et cetera, et cetera. So for him to come into this game as softly as he did, and Tony Romo used the word soft numerous times on the broadcast. I don't know, Jim, looking a little soft to me. But, Brandon Staley, essentially said that, for him to say that the Chiefs were just going to beat them in any way that they could, I don't know. Like, it just felt like this was an easily beatable Chiefs team on defense, and they got 2 takeaways, right? Now let's pivot to the offense. You got 2 takeaways and you didn't take advantage of them. And if you don't do that against the Chiefs, then you come up with 0 points on turnovers, you're going to lose. And that was also, that's been true in all of the games the Chargers have played under the Brandon Staley era against the Chiefs since 2021. Let's talk about Justin Herbert. I didn't think Justin Herbert was good today. Had an all right first half. Ultimately 43% completion in the second half with 2 interceptions. And, we've talked about, does Justin Herbert trust Quentin Johnston and all these things, but it's just like, you can see him actively in games staring down Keenan Allen, right? And the defense, if they know that Justin Herbert isn't going to go to anyone else on third down, why even try to defend that person, right? When he's essentially going to Keenan Allen if it's a throw. And it felt like the Chiefs got that memo later in the game. And the Chargers' like best third down looks to some extent from a passing standpoint really occurred when they were targeting like non-Keenan players, right? And, I think he got Donald Parham on a slant early in that game for a third down conversion. There were a couple others throughout the game, but, the Chiefs like knew that Herbert was going to stare down Allen as like the only target he trusts from that standpoint. But at what point is Allen being the only target he trusts a Justin Herbert problem as well? Because I will say I have not watched the All-22, but people keep saying, oh, Quentin Johnston only had 20 yards. Like, oh, what did he do this game? I'm like, Quentin Johnston was getting separation consistently. I have not looked at the PFF grades or anything, but there were probably 3 or 4 plays that I counted where Quentin Johnston ended up wide open down the field. And that's only on plays that I noticed during the game. I obviously have not rewatched every snap nor had the ability to until all 22 comes out. But, on the third down, he threw to Keenan Allen. Quentin Johnston was wide open. This was let me see the exact moment in the fourth quarter, just so I'm not like talking out of my ass here. But before they punted the ball back to the Chiefs, I want to say, it was before the last touchdown where they had the J.K. Scott punt that ended in the Mecole Hardman run back for 50 yards, which welcome back, Mecole Hardman. Jeez. But before that happened, Justin Herbert, essentially they run two short passes, they run a short pass to Keenan Allen for 2 yards, Eckler run for 3 yards, and then on 3rd and 5, everyone in the world, it's Willie Gay and a bunch of defenders circulated around Keenan Allen because they know Justin Herbert's not going anywhere else. So like at some point we have to talk about that, not just as Kellen Moore third down problem and a offensive problem as a whole, and just blame Quentin Johnston and blame all the other players. Like it's on Justin Herbert when the defense is looking at your eyes and knowing that it's that obvious, right? And Quentin Johnston on that play specifically got tons of separation and would have been wide open down the field if Justin Herbert simply did a second look, right? And it just felt like in this game, I don't think Herbert went through his reads properly, to be honest with you, especially more so in the second half. I think in the first half, they, designed their offense pretty well, and had their scripted series of plays that they wanted to do. But, for the second half to unfold as it did, and, you just can't, you got to play serious football against the Chiefs. And the Chargers ultimately go interception off this is the list of the Chargers possessions in the second half. Interception on the 73-yard drive, targeting Donald Parham. Ball got batted up in the air, although I'm not sure it wouldn't have been a pick anyway with where he was throwing that ball to Parham. I'm pretty sure that would have been a red zone interception regardless. 3 plays, 8 yards punt. That was where they ran the ball 3 straight times. 3 plays, 3 yards punt. And that's, 2 incomplete passes to Josh Palmer and Keenan Allen, another incomplete pass to Keenan Allen on 3rd down, the punt sequence that I just mentioned, and then the interception sequence where they go 26 plays and 9 yards, but the game was over anyway because it was a 2-possession game with 3 minutes left. So I don't know, like the offensive execution, I think from a Kellen Moore standpoint, has kind of been lacking, but really, to me, when I think about why they lost these last 2 games, and I know Justin Herbert has the discomfort with the finger, like that's obviously a problem. They're missing Mike Williams, which we've said again has been a big deal, I think, since he got injured in week 3 and hasn't played since September, which has sucked. And you felt the effect on the team since he's been out. They lost on offense because of Justin Herbert today. And that's the toughest part of this loss is just like the quarterback didn't play good enough. We always hype up Herbert versus Mahomes. Like it's always going to be an all-time matchup. And Mahomes showed up today. I mean, he didn't have like the, godliest of games per se. Although the box score is very pretty for him because of the Chargers defense. 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 91.9 QBR. Staley defense will do that for you, but Mahomes was also in his bag in general. Justin Herbert just didn't match, and that's partially because Steve Spagnuolo's defense was harder to play. But 17 for 30, 259 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 5 sacks, some of which were on the defense, but some of which were on Herbert too. Herbert took, I want to say, 2 or 3 coverage sacks that were on him. I would say 2 sacks specifically that were on Justin Herbert that I can remember. QBR 47.4, passer rating of 68.6. So I don't know. I always talk about like what the Chargers could have done better on offense. And I think you can certainly go to the play calling on specific drives and be like, they ran the ball 3 straight times and they shouldn't there, like I mentioned earlier. But when you can't take advantage off of the Chiefs' turnovers and Herbert played like he did today, particularly in the second half, like it's on him. I give a lot of blame to Staley and the game management, but Justin Herbert ultimately wasn't as good as he needs to be if the Chargers are going to compete with the Chiefs and compete with the Bills and compete with all of these teams, the tough teams on their schedule, right? Even to compete with a team like the Jets, who they play in 2 weeks, right? The Jets play really good defense and are a really sound fundamental team. And I'm worried about that game in 2 weeks. Frankly, I'm worried about Tyson Bagent on Sunday Night Football, which awesome. I have to stay up to watch Tyson Bagent versus Staley defense. But it's interesting just to kind of like watch this team not execute as we said before. And I think that starts with Staley in terms of the execution, and also it's on Herbert too, and on Kellen Moore for the second half largely. Offensive line not quite good enough, but I thought the offensive line after the first half kind of stabilized itself a little bit and gave Justin Herbert some opportunities in the pocket. Rashawn Slater and Gerald Everett actually opened up that long 49-yard touchdown run that Joshua Kelce had. He was a bright spot this game. In fairness to him, I think he had 7 carries for 75 yards. So shout out to Joshua Kelce for showing up. Shout out also, I will say, to Josh Palmer as well. This was the best game of Josh Palmer's career. 5 receptions, 133 yards on 7 targets. He has really stepped up and taken another level since Mike Williams has been out. So, from a route running standpoint, just how decisive he looks as a player. I wanted to give Josh Palmer some credit because honestly, I trusted Josh Palmer after last year. But, in particular, it just, I didn't know this kind of leap was coming for him. So credit to Josh Palmer for showing up and playing really well in this game. So, that's about all I have to say. Offensively, rushing attack was fine for the Chargers, although a bit inconsistent in terms of like when runs were called and how they were called at points. But ultimately, they ended up with 5.3 yards per carry on 26 carries. Somewhat influenced by the Joshua Kelce run, but it's not like they didn't block that to make it happen, right? So you give the offensive line and Kellen Moore some credit in scheming that. But yeah, they really kind of lacked in the pass game today. I just felt like, and I felt like it was more on Justin Herbert, like I said, than it was on Kellen Moore in terms of, again, how things are being schemed. And like, you can't go 43% completion against the Chiefs, on the road at Arrowhead with 2 interceptions in the second half, and think that the result is going to be different, don't think Justin Herbert was on his best game today, like I said much earlier. Trying to think of just some other maybe defensive notes I had. I don't know what the final snap count for Joey Bosa ends up being, but that's got to be like the lowest amount of snaps I remember for Bosa in a while. I know he is dealing with the broken toe. He had a couple of good moments, I say, in the second quarter in particular, and actually in the second half where he was getting some pressure. But, in a game where I thought Thule probably, the Chiefs paid a lot of attention to Thule and kind of shut him down, so to speak, in this game. I think they needed a better Joey Bosa performance than they ultimately ended up getting. So, tough game there, I think, for Bosa. I talked about the secondary already and some of the problems there. There's no one that I really want to like excoriate specifically in the secondary more than just the scheme and the unit and how it looks right now. On the whole, ASJ got a cool interception. That's fine, I guess. J.K. Scott was actually having a tremendous day punting until the Chargers special teams missed tackles. And J.K. Scott coming into this game had kind of underperformed on the season, but he actually got, I think, 2 punts inside the 5-yard line, if I'm correct. He had 4 of, I think all 4 of his 5 punts ended up inside the 20. Obviously, the Mecole Hardman return kind of messed that up. But he played really well today until, that final special teams breakdown, which, kind of ended the game for the Chargers on the Isaiah Pacheco touchdown. So I don't know. I think I've talked about everything they want to talk about I actually want to look at one quick thing as far as the team stats are concerned. Oh, you know what? I want to go on a little bit of a rant here, and I see this on Twitter all the time. Whenever the Chargers play the Chiefs, people talk about, oh, the refs did this, the refs did that. The Chiefs got more penalties called on them today than the Chargers. 6 penalties for 43 yards, 4 penalties for 43 yards. More penalties, and so like I get that people have this frustration with the Chiefs, but people are like, oh, that Eric Kendricks penalty, that pass interference wasn't a penalty. He didn't turn his head around in the end zone. Like, what do you want the ref to call there? You know, I get that some of the calls against the Chiefs are going to be weird, and that people have this thing about the refs. But like, you can't play as bad defensively as you did in the first half, and as bad offensively as you did in the second half, and complain about the refs. Like, I don't want to hear it. Like, put a cork in it, because it wasn't why the Chargers lost today, right? And look, the refs are I thought honestly better in this game than they were in the Cowboys game. I thought in the Cowboys game they were calling way too many flags on both teams. But you know, for people to just do this thing that they always do on Twitter, it's just such loser shit. They lost to the Chiefs because they played zone in the first half, and they lost to the Chiefs because of the bad special teams return and the bad offense in the second half. That's why they lost to the Chiefs, and they couldn't take advantage of their 2 takeaways. So for people that want to do this blaming the refs thing and all that, like, just say that, man. Like, it's not something that I want to hear right now. And frankly, this coaching staff, even if it were true that this game was slanted against the Chargers in some ref way, um, you know, the coaching staff and the team as a whole wouldn't really deserve that excuse. So yeah, tough game to kind of lose in this one. And look, they've had 2 winnable games the last 2 weeks. And I would also say the game against the Titans was also pretty winnable, and they dropped that one too. So the Chargers were in position to, you know, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and the Titans were kind of like, here you go, Chargers, take the game. Take the game. We want you to take the game. And the Chargers just couldn't take advantage any time. And when you now have 3 losses that were pretty easily preventable if you played differently, and the game was coached differently at various points, it just sucks. And you know, I like doing the, oh, you know, Chargers NYT upshot playoff simulator. Like, let's talk about the playoffs. To quote Jim Mora, playoffs. Like, this team is 2-4, and they're playing every bit like a 2-4 team. It's not like, oh man, they got really unlucky here, that they caught this bad break. They're doing all of this to themselves. And so that's kind of the most frustrating thing. I haven't watched many Chargers games in my lifetime where I felt like the team has kind of given up. And I've been struck by the last 2 weeks, the lack of effort that like I've kind of seen from the coaching to the players. Like, it's felt like a brand of uninspired football. Like, and it's easy to talk about, oh, a team has lost 2 or 3, you know, games in a row. But it just feels like they're not fighting anymore, right? And I kind of would want more fight in this team going forward. That's kind of a basic, you know, football answer thing to say. But I just felt like at various points today, the Chargers like kind of gave up on the game. And it really sucks that, you know, we're going into this stretch against the Bears and the Jets, 2 primetime games. And I don't know if I can trust the Chargers to win either one. You know, the Bears played really well. They have DJ Moore, who's always going to be an explosive play threat. And as we've seen with the Chiefs' explosive play threats today, they're not always schemed well against defensively. And so, like, they have to win the next 2 games if they want to save the season. If they're at, you know, 3-5 or 2-6 when we talk next time, it's like the season's over. And honestly, from an effort standpoint and everything we're seeing on the field, kind of feels like the season's over already. And Brandon Staley got up at his press conference yesterday, and like, it was the least combative I've ever seen Staley, where he just kind of took the hits, you know, and the questions from the media and like, didn't have this like, oh, actually our third down defense is awesome style rant, or the listen, Daniel, type of stuff that he does in his press conferences. It felt like a coach, and it felt like a team and an organization that just is playing defeated right now. And so sorry to leave you off on that depressing note. I hope they turn it around at some point. But yeah, no, this was a tough game to watch on all cylinders. I appreciate all of the Chargers fans who have stuck around with us, through these weeks. But it's just been tough. So hopefully they bounce back against the Bears. Personally, not counting on it. But I hope this team does have some better results and starts stacking up some wins soon, because otherwise we're going to be talking about a pretty brutal offseason. That would be on our way if things don't change. So thanks to everybody for watching. See you guys next time on Bolt Breakdowns. Let's beat the Bears, I hope, and bolt up.